And Jesus said, I ask, excuse me, I ask not only on behalf of these, but also on behalf of those who will believe in me through their word, that they may all be one. As you, Father, are in me, and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. The glory that you have given me, I have given them, so that they may be one, as we are one. I in them, and you in me. That they may become completely one, so that the world may know that you have sent me and have loved them, even as you have loved me. Father, I desire that those also whom you have given me may be with me where I am, to see my glory, which you have given me because you loved me before the foundation of the world. Righteous Father, the world does not know you, but I know you, and these know that you have sent me. I made your name known to them, and I will make it known, so that the love with which you have loved me may be in them, and I in them. Well, you may not know the name Robert Bernstein, but he died last week at the age of 96. And he worked for a brief time at Simon & Schuster, and he kind of worked his way up in the ranks there, but then suddenly, in I think around 1956, was let go. They said they were restructuring and didn't have a position for him anymore. So they let him go, and then he went along and became a stock boy at other places, and eventually got a position at Random House. And within 10 years, he made his way from the bottom ranks all the way up to president, and then CEO, and then chairman. And he realized that the power of the pen was indeed mightier than the sword. And so he began to expand the operation and began to give a voice to other writers, especially when he was traveling in the Soviet Union and he saw a man there who was explaining the things that were happening behind the Iron Curtain, things that the rest of the world didn't know about because there was no such thing as news cameras and reporters back behind those lines. And so he decided to give those people a voice, and he expanded the openness and the availability for them to write and to share their memoirs and their experiences. His father, when he was growing up, his father would always tell him, he said, just stay in your own lane. Mind your own business, don't worry about the plight of other people because that'll only bring you trouble, because their troubles are going to become yours. So it's better off if you just stick with what you have and just keep your nose to the grindstone. And apparently he was a little rebellious, didn't listen very well because he ended up founding Human Rights Watch. Decided he wasn't going to turn the other way, wasn't going to look away from the atrocities that were happening. And this isn't to say that Bernstein was perfect. It wasn't to say that his record on, say, Israeli-Palestinian relations was perfect, but he brought a lot of light to things that were happening that created change. And when I read this text from Acts that Brittany read for us, and I read it through that lens, I wonder about what's going on here, because there's a lot that's really neat happening here, and it seems like just this nice, wonderful story where Paul and Silas were captured, those poor guys, and then they started singing, and there was an earthquake, and they were freed, and hallelujah, praise the Lord, everything's perfect. But when you read it a little deeper, there's some disturbing stuff going on here, I think. And for some reason this week, particularly, it spoke to me. So let's just spend a little bit of time dissecting this text. So Paul and Silas are walking along, and there's this slave girl who keeps saying that, oh, this is the slave of the Most High God. Now, it seems like she's saying something good. I mean, this is the truth. I would think that this is what Paul would want her to say. But for some reason, Paul becomes annoyed. And when he becomes annoyed, he casts out the demon that's possessing her, this demon of divination that's allowed her to apparently foretell the future and do all these fun little tricks for their slave owners as a means of making money. So Paul casts out the demon, and he goes about his way. And I have to ask myself, well, what the heck happens to the girl? He's taken away her worth, so to speak, and he just leaves her. Now, what are these slave owners going to do with her now? Right? And not only does he leave her, but he never once speaks to the sister system of slavery itself. That's what bothers me. In fact, he would say, okay, well, Paul had a mission. He was there to do one thing, so he was going to do it. He wasn't going to take the time to try to undo slavery and, all of these things and try to break down the system. So you got to give him a little bit of grace. Okay, fine. But when I read the rest of Paul's letters, I see those letters, like the letter with Onesimus, saying that, well, slavery is just the way things are, so obey your master and do as you're told, and don't be trying to run away. You can still praise God as a slave. That's okay. And that's what Paul wrote. So, I'm still disturbed. I'm still trying to make sense of what Paul's trying to do here, because Paul is supposed to be this wonderful apostle of God. But then, the gaze turns inward, as it usually does when we read Scripture. And I ask myself and all of us, who are our annoying little slave girls? Who are the people, or what are the things that while we're on our way to do something and have a focus on something that may not be as grandiose as tearing down the systems that oppress, this little thing or frivolous or whatever comes along and we say, get over here. When really that's the thing that's staring us in the face to remind us of what's at the root of the problem. Right? But Paul, for whatever reason, chooses to ignore it. Then when we fast forward in the story, I see something else that really disturbs me. Paul and Silas are thrown in jail because the slave owners say, hey, these guys are disturbing the peace. They're preaching and saying things that aren't right for us as Roman citizens. They're bringing in their goofy religion, and we got to stop this because they're disrupting the peace. Now, in reality, it was the girl who was disrupting the peace. I mean, as far as a clear definition of disturbing the peace. Or you could say that the slave owners were disturbing the peace because of their oppressive ways, made it so that peace was impossible. But Paul and Silas were put in jail for disturbing the peace. And they're put in the deepest, darkest corner of prison. And they're left there, seemingly to despair and wonder what is to become of them. When they start singing, and they start to bring hope, and they start to bring joy, and all of a sudden there's this earthquake, and they go free, and all the people rejoice, and it's wonderful. But why is it? Why is it every time we read this story, why is it that every preacher who has preached on it gets so excited about the power of God to get Paul and Silas free of their bondage when that little girl is still there in hers? I don't know about you all, but that bothers me. And in fact, I think it's emblematic of Christianity in a lot of ways, because how many stories have we heard on the news of Christian missionaries in some third world country who got captured by Islamic militants or whatever, insert title. And then when we hear they went free, we rejoice. If we hear they got killed, we say, oh, that's horrible. Right? But the story of the indigenous peoples who are still oppressed there gets swept under the rug. Why? Well, maybe we have some more clues in here. There's got to be a happy ending to this after all. So we have the jailer. The jailer is aware that he's in some big trouble, right? These prisoners that he was supposed to watch have gone free. And he's ready to kill himself, because he knows if he faces the powers that be, there's going to be real trouble, and it's better for him just to do the honorable thing and die. And so as he prepares to do it, Paul comes along and says, don't do that. Don't do that. It's okay. You're forgiven. And the jailer says, well, what do I have to do to be saved? I can't stand to be like this. And Paul says, believe on Jesus. Believe on Jesus. Now I wonder what this means. Because if believe on Jesus means, here you go. Here's all the things you're supposed to believe about Jesus, and if you subscribe to these, you're going to be saved. Or was it, believe what Jesus taught about freedom for the oppressed, for sight, for the blind, right? If that's the case, then so far we're still not passing the test. Because oppression is still here in this story. It sure as heck has not been redeemed. So the jailer and his family believe on Jesus, whatever that means, and they're baptized. So if we think, okay, well, this is a good thing. This is a good thing. We reach out to the powers that be, and if we baptize them into our faith, then everything's going to be great because they're going to come into our system, and things are going to work out for the best. But, going back to the news again, we find out that some of the most oppressive, racist, homophobic people are Christians. Okay, well, that didn't pass. Well, there's still got to be something good in here. So we keep on reading. And we wonder. We wonder about these people in control, the people in power, and we look at the jailer as one who had not only power himself, but then when he seemingly failed, he got afraid of the real people in power, right? And we ask ourselves, maybe there's something in here. Maybe this is a story of failure, but that's okay because we learn from their mistakes. Maybe we learn that when we take away the fears of the people in power and with the control, or seemingly so, maybe by taking away those fears and the illusion of control, perhaps those people start to see those around them. Perhaps their worldview changes. Perhaps they become more compassionate. So maybe it's not just about shunning the bad guys, but maybe it is embracing them, but also taking some pity on them in the process. It doesn't mean that we condone their ways. But we say, what is it that you fear that makes you feel like you have to step on people along the way to maintain your illusion of power and control? And through those conversations, maybe, just maybe, there's some sort of redemption. And so we keep on reading. We read a story, perhaps, about a man named Paul who believed, I can't. And that's the story that we keep telling ourselves. I can't. I cannot dismantle oppression. I cannot upset racism. I cannot make everybody be inclusive. Perhaps not. But why is it that we always start the story with cannot? Because I think can't is a very, very dangerous word, and perhaps it's the most dangerous word that we have in our vocabulary, because it's the word that leaves the systems in place. What if we were to change can't to must? What if we were to ask ourselves, well, what can I do? All of us were on this journey of appreciative inquiry, and we can possibly keep reminding ourselves how small we are and how few we are and how inconsequential we are, and that we can't possibly affect change. But that story, that narrative, is the very one that continues to give power to the people who would oppress. What if we start telling ourselves a different story that says, I can, just in my own little pocket of the universe? I ask myself that. What can I do? I mean, I'm pastor of a small church in Chicago. I've got no power. What can I do? But then I look at myself in the mirror and I say, well, yeah, I grew up poor. I don't have power by every sense of the mean, but I am a white, male, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, privileged, straight, cisgendered male. Society says I have power. Interesting. So what if I were to reach out to the margins? And as Greg Boyle said, go to those margins and not try to change the indigenous peoples or the people that society has said are too small or too different or too bad or too scary. But if I go to them and I let them change me, and what if at the same time I reach out to those people in power and I say, why? What are you so afraid of? And what if I reach to my own kids, especially my sons? And in this process, what if I model for them what it looks like to be a white, privileged person who supposedly has power? And what if I teach them it's not okay to use women's bodies to fulfill our desires? What if I teach them it's not okay to judge people for the color of their skin or their sexual preference or any part of their identity? What if I show them that the story that we hear as males, especially white males, that we're supposed to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and get stuff done and everything's going to be okay, ain't okay? What if I teach my sons that vulnerability is a good thing, that it takes courage and it takes power to be vulnerable? What if I teach them that hurt people, and when you try to pull yourself up by the bootstraps, you end up hurt? And if you get power, God forbid, will God help us? Because when hurt people get power, the hurt spreads exponentially. So we watch, so we learn. And so we learn from what I would say was Paul's failing in this story. But that's okay, because the story is still being written by each and every one of us. And it's a story that takes the word can't, looks in the face of the least of these and says, by God,